Hi, welcome back to Now TV Canada, and I am just on YouTube channel. Um, in my video, my spiritual video, my message to challenging people to vote for me to take over in fixing Canada and helping Charles figure out what to do with the wealth of our land and our nation and the salvation of our children and our futures for everyone. I showed you guys this and this material from a book called The Whole Mind. I didn't read it. That video was long enough. I had a completely different message, which I did pretty good overall to get across to everybody, and I think everybody understands it. So in this video, really quickly, I'm going to read it. This stuff. Non-ordinary states of consciousness, short form known for as NOSC, from the book The Whole Mind. Which unfortunately at the time my life was extremely disrupted. It was very active years of my life. And I just didn't get to finish the book. And I fell in love with this book. In my education in psychiatry, that would have been like my thesis. This wholeheartedly explains me. And how much I would have gone and eaten off of this material. But I did manage to save these pages from that book definitively to help communicate the reality of the truth of God and heaven and the war and the things that Jesus did, and that it's all true, and that God and the devil are not the same person, not going to the same place, and he can't be forgiven, and things can't be restored. And he can't take over. He can't do any of these things in psychiatry to fix this stuff. And these pages I read to you right now will sort of explain the constant repetitiveness of how significant the sameness is of the two worlds and the two minds and the two different forms of those opposite entities. So here we go. Modern psychiatry does not differentiate between mystical or spiritual states and mental disease. That would be the devil side of the problem, right? Consistently the same, unchangeable. People experiencing these states are often labeled psychotic, are hospitalized and receive medication to suppress the symptoms, but are described as spiritual emergencies or psycho-spiritual crisis. So in the devil's world, he's there to cloud everyone's ideas, and it's all the same, and it's all mental health, right? There is nothing else. Oh, just drug them up, right? Because God isn't real, God isn't there, God doesn't exist. There is no difference between bad or good, or that good is bad and bad is good, whatever, right? It is useful and important to study non-ordinary states of consciousness because of their great therapeutic potential, and because they are a rich source of revolutionary new information about the psyche, human nature, and the nature of reality. Dreams. We all get rich dreams, and lots of the time those dreams have messages for us, and we have to learn how to discern those. So you should read books about how to decipher dreams. It's very valuable. It helps a lot. Western psychiatry and psychology do not see non-ordinary states of consciousness, NOSC, as potential sources of healing or of valuable information about the human psyche, but basically as a pathological phenomenon. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to know that it's real, because the devil doesn't want to have anybody rescue anyone that he damages, right? Anything he alters, anything he changes, anything that hides inside of somebody that is from him, he wants to stay there. They want to stay there. They don't want to get kicked out. Western psychology is noted for being biased in two significant ways. It is ethnocentric, which means that it considers its own view of the human psyche and of reality to be the only correct one and superior to all other ways. It is cognicentric, more accurate word, pragmacentric, only experiences and observations in the ordinary state of consciousness. There is no other consciousness, no other state to study. It's that way or nothing, which is why I don't like electrocution, because that doesn't fix it. When somebody's been drugged and then gang raped at a bar or whatever, and they're brought in the hospital in a state of despondency, and they're like that for a couple of weeks or more, you don't fry their brains to try to get them out of it. You leave them alone until they come out of it, until they can remember everything. There's nothing wrong with them. Their response to such a horrible thing is absolutely natural, and it's real, and it's amazing they've even survived. And so, of course, there are other states of consciousness, because it's necessary for somebody who's been damaged to go into that kind of state, and in order to find a way to recover through God, through Jesus, through the Spirit, through love, through knowing that she's got family, a mother and a brother or whatever, to help that person bring themselves back to where we are in this conscious system, and fight for their life back, and not let the bad guys win. Psychiatry's disinterest in holotropic states and disregard for them has resulted in a culturally insensitive approach and a tendency to pathologize in its own narrow context all activities that cannot be understood. Completely dismissive, right? This includes the ritual and spiritual life of ancient and pre-industrial cultures and the entire spiritual history of humanity. Literally, the Word of God, Jesus himself. All of this stuff. God. Like science, we came from animals. Anyways, if we systematically study the experiences and observations associated with NOSC, or more specifically, holotropic states, this leads inevitably to a radical revision of our basic ideas about consciousness and the human psyche, and to entirely new forms of psychiatry, psychology, and psychotherapy, my specialties. Traditional academic psychiatry and psychology use a model that is limited to biology and postnatal biography and the Freudian individual unconscious. Like, I'm reading the Freudian Reader and I stop because it's like snore fast because of the stuff he didn't understand, because he went from being Jewish, having a bar mitzvah, then deciding to be an atheist. Right, because he didn't have the accurate knowledge of God at that time in the world. So God's like, well, he's better off just becoming a doctor, studying medicine and the mind, and learning about how to understand the ego and the superego, that kind of thing. And overall, I guess he did all right. And then he was giving Jung as a friend, right? So he had his disciple. So he had that. Anyways, this model has to be vastly expanded, and a new map of the psyche has to be created to describe all the phenomena occurring in NOSC. Transpersonal meaning, beyond the personal, of transcending the personal. These are experiences that have been described through the ages in the religious, mystical, and occult literature. These experiences involve going beyond the usual boundaries of the individual, his or her body and ego, and beyond three-dimensional space and linear time that restrict perception of the world in the ordinary state of consciousness. Spiritual possession of humans is back with an abundant force today, and we see it everywhere, all the time. Our hospitals are overflowing, right? Our streets are bogged down with people, and we don't know how to help them. Families are pleading with people in public to help find their lost loved ones because they got sick. And growing up, they were fine and came from wonderful homes. And when they get sick, then they leave. They don't want the families to see them like that, because whatever's in them isn't somebody that knows them. It's not that person. It's not the family that they belong to. Not comfortable, so they go away. And beyond three-dimensional space and linear time that restrict perception of the world in the ordinary state of consciousness. Spiritual possession of humans is back with an abundant force today, and living in these days with such modern medicine as science's only solution, there is a lot of misdiagnosed people, burdened with a force they have no power over and nowhere to turn for help. When Christ walked the earth, it was simple enough for him to cleanse a person filled with a bad spirit. Today, it's not so simple. Many of the homeless people we see walking the streets are suffering parts of demon inclinations. Most are put on medicine that Western society, that Western medicine hopes will help them to not harm themselves with. And then they are released back into society because Western medicine does not understand. And from the point of view of traditional psychiatry and psychology, the material world represent the only reality, and any form of spiritual belief is seen as reflecting a lack of education, primitive superstition, magical thinking, or a regression to infantile patterns of functioning. People who have direct experiences of spiritual realities are seen as ill. Western psychiatry makes no distinction between a mystical experience and a psychotic experience and sees both as manifestations of mental disease. Completely untrue, and I think for the majority of us today in society, we know this. In its rejection, it does not differentiate primitive folk beliefs or fundamentalists. Literal interpretations of scriptures from sophisticated mystical traditions and Eastern spiritual philosophies based on centuries of systematic introspective exploration of the psyche. But you know there's long past histories of different cultures and why they've studied medicine in their way that they have, because we've had these curses on people. These problems have been around for centuries. In contrast with the Western attitude that pathologizes the entire spiritual history of humanity, transpersonal psychology seriously studies and respects the entire range of human experience, including perinatal and transpersonal phenomena, to prevent confusion and misunderstandings that in the past have compromised many similar discussions. It is critical to make a clear distinction between spirituality and religion. Right? Demons are spiritual. Evil is spirituality. Antichrist, invisible things that float around in the sky. Even the evil people that die and start to degenerate in the ground that we bury them in our country, well, their germs are still floating in the air. So now you have germ warfare. And it's causing chronic coughs and sicknesses of other things that we have to breathe in. It's real. You bet your bottom dollar it is. And it's not going to go anywhere until Jesus completely fixes everything. Now, where did I leave off here? Spirituality is based on direct experiences of other realities. It does not necessarily require a special place or a special person mediating contact with the divines. They're not talking about, let's do Ouija boards or tarot cards, which is true. Spirituality involves a special relationship between the individual and the cosmos. And it is, in its essence, a personal and private affair. So, in short, the observations from NOSC research represent a serious challenge to contemporary science. The results causing people to question some of the more fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality. Major scientific progress has always occurred when the leading paradigm was seriously challenged and failed to account for some significant findings. In the history of science, paradigms arrive, dominate the field for some time, and are replaced by new ones. It's clear that materialistic science has an incomplete and inadequate image of reality, and that its ideas about the nature of consciousness and matter, particularly the brain, must be radically revised. We would literally find ourselves in a different universe. That's the key of the study that I did earlier today with everybody. Don't vote. Let's bring an end to this current system of things because it's not working. It is hard to imagine that Western academic science will continue indefinitely to ignore all the challenging evidence that has already been accumulated in the study of various forms of holotropic states, as well as the influx of new data. Sooner or later, it will be necessary to face this new evidence and accept its far-reaching theoretical and practical consequences. We are rapidly approaching a point when transpersonal psychology and the work with non-ordinary states of consciousness will become integral parts of a new scientific paradigm of the future. So, in closing, it is simply to say that Jesus lives, but he is the answer to those notes on those 2 pages that I took many years ago and kept for recording with you here today. And I have now remembered what it was I wanted to share in the ending of the other video about what Joseph Smith got right in his time. Let me look it up. Stay with me here, guys. Okay. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has never used the cross, either as a symbol for the church or as a fixture in buildings. While we acknowledge and reverence the sacrifice Jesus made, we focus instead on his life, teachings, and resurrections. Using the cross as jewelry or as ornamentation is a purely sectarian practice and has no place in the restored gospel. For us, the cross is the symbol of the dying Christ. This is what Joseph said. While our message is a declaration of the living Christ that lives of our people, that the lives of our people must become the most meaningful expression of our faith. In fact, therefore, the symbol of our worship. Because our Savior lives, we do not use the symbol of his death as the symbol of our faith. But what shall we use? No sign, no work of art, no representation of form is adequate to express the glory and the wonder of the living Christ. He told us what that symbol should be when he said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." The symbol of our faith. That's it. So he never needed to use it. He always said, because he lives, he already died for us to declare that Jesus lives and to follow with our expression of faith. So that's what I wanted to share and how that connects with what I just read to you about the non-ordinary states of consciousness from the book of the whole mind, and how Jesus could heal people then when he was here easily, that today we don't have people that have the magic or the gift to be able to do that now. And so that is what made my conversion to this church so easy and acceptable for me, because in the history with Russell Taze and those videos that were made of creation, he was still using a cross. And Joseph had already died. And they had all this time from the time that the projections screens were invented to talk to each other and bring both sides of the veil together and share the material together and expand and become the kingdom that Jesus and God were trying to give us and bless us with, to create an earthly paradise, to avoid this holy war that we're now in. But because people have pride and everybody wants to be the most important and favorite person to God in all of this, nobody's talking. They turn their backs on each other. But I'm not like that. I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to listen, and I'm grateful that I have, because I'm able to now share that with you. So I'm going to go and actually get the Whole Mind book. And I'm much older now and in a much better place in my life. And I'm going to finish reading it. And I might actually get to actually finish writing my thesis. But I just want to say that Jesus lives. So you don't need to fight with people or discuss whether it was a cross. If you look in the history of Antioch, when there was preaching going on, when Jesus called it the way, there was no name for it. And the Pharaoh was invited. I don't remember who it was. Barnabas? Paul or Silas, whatever, they were there to meet with the Pharaoh, who was invited with the ruler of the kingdom at that time, who confronted them with saying, "So you people are the Christ ones." And that was the first way that they were ever addressed in terms of what we were called. So they were called Christ ones. He said to them, "So you are the Christ ones," as in serving the Christ, this person that has now died, that has been nailed and then resurrected and then flew back up to heaven with immortality. The first Superman, literally. And that's why he lives. So in reality, that's where the word Christian comes from Christ ones. And that didn't happen until well after Jesus died. Before that, there was no Christ ones. There was no Christianity. So there could not have ever been a cross. The word itself couldn't have existed because Christ ones didn't exist. Christianity didn't exist. It was Israelites. It was Judaism. It was Jehovah God, the God of old, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, because Jesus was not on the earth. So I hope that helps clear everything up for everybody, and why it's okay to study the material from both of these organizations, because of the impact it's all going to have when Jesus finishes putting it all together with his 144,000 and those that are here on earth that will work with him as well in building a better future. So this is Superwoman signing out. Thank you very much for watching all of the videos. Keep coming back for more. And I hope it helps you all live a better life and make better decisions with your future. Bye. Now TV signing off.